Hello everyone and welcome back to the Linux hands-on video series. This is part 3 of the 4-part series that's currently underway. Moving ahead with this part will require at least a basic understanding of Linux and some of the terminal commands. If you do not, however, fulfill that requirement, I highly recommend you to check out part 1 and part 2, links to which will be in the description below. There's also a companion blog post for this part, just in case you prefer a step-by-step document instead. With that disclaimer aside, let's get started without any more delays. So the very first part that we're going to touch with this video would be the productivity side of things. So oftentimes you will find yourself repeating certain commands on the terminal while you're using it. So if I go into my own terminal, you can see if I scroll, there are a couple of commands that I have been repeating a lot of times. And yeah, command history does come in play in getting the job done, but it actually doesn't help you save those keystrokes, because the number of times you scroll, it actually compensates for the command that you are willing to type. So that's where this concept of command aliasing comes in place. In the English language, alias means that a person who is known by a certain name is also known by another reference or a name, which would be something like his pet name. So the same definition will hold true for this case as well. So let's see how we can use command aliasing to actually end up saving a lot of keystrokes. So before actually seeing how to create aliases, let's first see how we can list them. So to do that, you just have to type in the alias command, and the system would return some of the global aliases that have been created and that can be used by all of the users of the system. Alright, cool. So let me clear the console out, and now let's assume a hypothetical situation where I'm using the echo command a lot. Well, it is just 4 characters, but if you add it up on a scale of, let's say, using this command 200 times, you end up wasting a lot of keystrokes. So what we are going to do is we're going to create an alias for this command. So to do that, you have to type in alias, then specify the alias. So I'm going to call it EC, and then give an equal sign and specify the actual command inside it. Now once you hit enter, that alias would be created. And now if I do EC hello world, you can see it works. And if I go ahead and list the alias, you can see EC is now an alias. But here's an interesting part about this. Once you quit the terminal, this alias will also be gone, because it's not yet a part of the permanent system configurations. So in order to do that, what you need to do is mention this alias in the terminal configuration. So this is a bash shell, and the way in which you do that would be through the bash rc file. So let's first view the bash rc file using the cat command, and the bash rc file will be in this location. So this is the content of the bash rc file. You can see it has a lot of configuration in it. So we are going to use this very file to actually go ahead and create an alias. So let's first clear the terminal out, and let's do instead of the cat command, we're going to use nano, and let's specify the alias right here. So I'm just going to write a comment so that I can get back and change it if I want, and then alias EC equals echo. Let's exit the nano editor, let's save it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to resource this file. So let's type in source and then .bash rc, and let's hit enter. Let's clear the terminal out, and now if I do an alias, you can see it's listed as echo. And if I go ahead and type echo hello world, you can see it works. Cool. and this will be persisted across sessions. So even if you quit the terminal, this will end up working once you relaunch it. Now that we have learned how to list aliases and how to view them, it only makes sense to learn how to remove them. So let's say I want to remove this EC alias. To do that, we have the unalias command, which is very appropriately named. So let's go ahead and see how it works. We're going to type in unalias and the name of the alias. And now if I do an alias, you can see EC is gone. And now if I go back and try and type out this command, it says EC was not found. So there you have it. This is how the aliasing works. You can use this for almost all the commands, be it shell or any other utility that you can imagine. If I go into my local machine and if I type in alias, you can see I have a lot of aliases defined, especially for Git, because that's something that I use on a daily basis. So you can see to rebase and abort, I have grba. To checkout, I use gco, and a whole bunch more right here. Cool. So definitely try this one out. If you find yourself repeating a command, it is going to end up saving a couple of hours at the very least in the long run. Cool. Let's move along. So oftentimes in software development, when people write software, they maintain two different environments. One would be the local development environment, which is configured according to the user's need, and then there would be a workspace environment which will match the configuration that your production server has. So it always makes sense to have these two scopes isolated from one another, and most people end up using something like Docker or Vagrant or virtual environment or something like that to achieve this. While we are not going to cover how you can set up a virtual environment or something like that, as there are a bunch of resources online to teach you that, I am going to show you how you can use a command to figure out where a binary is located and if it is in the user space or the dev space. So this command is called whereis, and this is how it works. So I'm going to type in whereis, and let's say I want to find out where Git is located. I'm going to type in Git after that, and let's hit enter. And as you can see, it says Git is located in user bin Git. And now if I want to list where my Java installation is, I'm going to type in whereis Java, and it can show me where each of these binaries are located. So you might be wondering where this will come useful. So assume a situation where your local environment is using something like Python 2.7, but for your work projects you actually are working on Python 3.0. So you upgrade a project to a newer library version and it causes some compatibility issues. So it always makes sense to check where your imports are coming in from. If it's coming from 2.7 or 3.1, it significantly reduces the debugging time, because once you know where those packages are being referenced from, you can narrow down the cause of the error. Alright, so that's the whereis command. Let's keep moving. Next up, let's take a look at what services are and how we can manipulate them. So any long-running background operation is termed as service in a generic term. And in Linux, it's basically a couple of things that that are always running in background. Let's say your secure shell server, which allows you to connect to your server remotely. So as you can see right now, I am actually using my server for this demonstration via my local machine, and this has been made possible using SSH. So we're going to take a look at how to start services, how to stop them, how to restart them, and how to check their status. So before we go ahead and do that, let's first see what all services are built into the Linux OS. So all of your services would be located in the etc folder, which you can find in the root inside of the init D directory. So if I go ahead and do an ls now, you can see that there are a lot of services, you have GDM3, you have Deluge, which is a torrent client, you have SSH, Single, and a bunch more. So we're going to limit our scope to the SSH service because that's the one we have covered in the blog post. So it would make some sense. Alright, so first let's clear out the console and now let's check the status of the service. And to do that, we use service followed by the service name, which is SSHD, and then the option supplied. And as you can see, the secure shell is currently running. Awesome. So if I go ahead and quit now, and let's clear it out. And now if I decide to stop the service, we're going to use the same sequence of command and just apply in a stop at the end. And now if I check the service status, you can see it says it's inactive. Awesome. So let's go ahead and now start the service again. We're going to go ahead and do service SSHD start. And if I do a status again, you can see it's active. And if I go ahead and supply in the restart flag, it'll actually stop the service and restart it. So let's go ahead and do a status. You can see it's running. So I didn't really go into the depth of how services are functioning and how you can create your own service and have it run every time the system boots. But that is one of the things that is very crucial when you're developing a microservices based application or a custom server for that matter, which has to handle a lot of things. You will, however, find a lot of resources which will get you started on how to create services and manage them. But this was just a primer on how to administer that part of the Linux operating system. Cool. So let's keep moving along. Let's clear the console. And now we are going to see how we can visualize the disk usage right here from the terminal. Since this part is mostly about how to administer the Linux OS from the terminal, this is one of those things that we always do on our local machines. We just check how much disk space is used and then manage our files accordingly. So to do that, we're going to use the df command, which stands for disk file system, and it is used to display the amount of disk space that is available on a particular file system. For syntax and other information, go ahead and visit the companion blog post in the link below. But here's how it works. So you just have to type in df and hit the enter key, and it'll tell you how much space has been used by which volume which is mounted. But as you can see right now, it is not in a human readable format. So let's fix that using the -h flag, which stands for human readable format. So if I hit enter now, it's going to show things in a more human readable manner, which is in megabytes and gigabytes. Awesome. In relay with the df command, we'll have the disk usage command, which is going to tell you how much space is being utilized by which type of file on your file system. And again, to do that, you just have to supply the du command and hit enter, and it's going to list a whole bunch of stuff now. But as you can see, it's again not in a human readable format. So just like the df command, we are going to supply in the -h flag with the du command, and now as you can see, it's returning things in kilobytes and megabytes, which is far more human readable. Now that's only one part of the story. What if you want to find out which type of file is taking what amount of space within a directory? To do that, we use the -s flag along with the file type. Let's see how it works. I'm going to go ahead and clear the console. So I'm going to type in du -s along with the file type, which is txt in this case, and let's hit enter. And as you can see, we have 4 text files in this directory, which are taking the following amount of space. Awesome. Let's keep rolling. So next up, we are going to see how you can edit your password right from the terminal. So to do that, we use the password command, and its usage is again fairly straightforward. You just have to type in PASSWD and hit enter. Now it will prompt you that it is changing the password for which user, and you will have to enter the old password. So in my case, I'm going to enter my old password here, which is, I'm not going to tell you the password, and let's hit enter, and let's enter the new password, root123, again root123, and it just changed my password. So for security reasons, Linux does not show the number of characters you're typing in form of asterisk, just because it's gonna take you one step closer to brute forcing someone's password if you know its length. So you're gonna have to take my word for it that this works, and let's keep moving along. Alright, next let's see how you can actually download files over the internet. Downloading files and media is another one of those things that we commonly do on our desktop operating systems, but there is a way in which you can actually make use of a terminal utility to download files, and it is quite efficient because it comes with the feature of relaunching a download if it fails due to connectivity issues or some other reason. So the command is called wget, and it stands for webget, and you can see in the man description it's a non-interactive network downloader. So let's actually go ahead and check it out in a demo. So I'm going to type in wget, and then you have to supply the URL to the file that you want to download. So I'm going to hit enter now. So as you can see, it started off the download, and it's giving you the statistic on how long it's going to take the download to complete, what's the size of the file that's already been downloaded. So this is going to come in handy if you're trying to download something off of the internet and you do not have a download utility, or you just don't want to use the browser at the moment. Awesome. So let's keep moving along. Let's kill the download, and let's go ahead and clear the console. And the next command that we're going to check out is actually going to be helpful for system access control and other similar purposes. So this command is called who, and it will let you manage access to the main system and check and monitor the activities of the users who are already logged into the system. Let's see how it works. There's not really much to it. You just have to type in who and hit enter, and as you can see, I am the only user right now who's using the console, but in case you were running a server which has a daily active user stat of 1,000 or 1,000,000 or something like that, all of those users would have been listed right here, and that data would be a pointer to let you know which user you want to block or blacklist or grant access to. Great, so let's keep moving along. Let's clear the console again, and now let's move on to the network troubleshooting side of things. So with this next command, you will be able to check if a remote host is online or is not. So to do so, we're going to use something known as the ping command, and I'm pretty sure some of you might already be familiar with it. The usage is pretty simple. It's ping followed by the URL, and the system is going to send some ICMP packets to the remote host, and the remote host is going to reply with the same tool. So now let's kill this and let's see an actual usage of this command. So let's clear the console, and I'm going to do a ping to my server. So you can see it's live right now and it is responding. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the ping right here, and I'm going to go ahead and shut down my server from another terminal. And now that the server is off, if I go ahead and ping it up again, you can see the requests have started to time out, and once it starts up again, it will start receiving the bytes back from the server. So as you can see, from sequence 7 to sequence 17, my server was under shutdown. Awesome. So let's move along and let's finally cover the last part of this video, which would be how to actually shut down your machine. Now, for obvious reasons, I cannot shut down my actual machine which I'm recording this thing on. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a demo by shutting down my server. So to do so, we are going to use the pretty obvious shutdown command, but let's man it out once before doing that. And as you can see, it comes with a bunch of options. You can halt the machine using -H. You can power off the machine, which is the default operation without any flag. You can reboot the machine, and you can also cancel a pending shutdown. So we are going to go ahead and see how to actually restart a machine. So to do that, we'll supply the -R flag with the shutdown command. And as you can see, it has scheduled a shutdown for 11:10:36 seconds. So if I do a date, I can see it's 1 minute away. So let's wait for the console to exit. And as you can see, the connection was closed by the server because it was just shut down. Alright folks, that's all that we have for you this week. Make sure you try out all the commands that I have listed in the video. In case you run into any errors or you have a doubt, leave us a comment or tweet it out to us. We'll definitely help you out with that. In case something still doesn't make sense, you can definitely go ahead and read the companion blog post which is linked in the description below. We'll be back again next week with part 4, where we are going to cover some really exciting stuff. But until then, make sure you give yourself enough time to practice the commands and familiarize yourself with the system administration aspect of the Linux OS. Until next time, this is me Pratik signing off.